Welcome to the Super Facts Show on the Super Facts Network. Featuring St. Laz, who also hosts the popular web series Gem Pop and music journalist Mark Walter Ward. They have discussions about hip-hop, culture, society, philosophy, and everything else. Now available on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts. How you doing, everybody? It's Mark Walter Ward, Super Facts Show, Super Facts Network. We got Henry Abbott from TrueHoop.com, one of the most intriguing places for basketball journalism online. It's existed since 2005 as a blog. He's affiliated with ESPN for a long time. You may have seen him on SportsCenter or his work on SportsCenter. Make sure you go to True Hoop and subscribe to the Substack. How you doing tonight, sir?
Very good. How about you?
I'm doing great. To be honest with you, my mind's blown. Recently, you and your website have run a series of articles about the NBA, where some of the governors get their cash from, with overtones to, ties to the CIA and Jeffrey Epstein and just all kinds of mind-blowing stuff. So, far be it from me to sum it up. So let's say not the elevator pitch, but let's say you had a meeting to pitch a movie. Yeah. How would you give a look? Because we want them to go read it. Y'all definitely need to go read it.
Yeah, come on this journey with me. I'll be honest, it's mind-blowing to me too. This is not a story where I got it all dialed in, I can explain everything. This is like, whoa, and you open the next door and it's like, oh, and the next door, like, what? So what's definitely happened is Apollo Global is one of the world's biggest private equity firms, and it definitely is important to the NBA. Two of the NBA's richest people, the governor of the 76ers and the Hawks, got their fortunes from this company. So that's unquestionably true. It's definitely close to the NBA, for other reasons too. They go on and on, but like one of the most impressive ones is Adam Silver. One of his best friends is his Duke college roommate, Jim Zelter, who's now the co-president of Apollo Global. Their headquarters are like a few blocks from each other. And a lot of the richest people in the world are in this like little clique that used to work at Drexel Burnham Lambert. And Apollo was born out of all that. So like a lot of the NBA billionaires who aren't straight from Apollo are very close to them. So
what degree of separation? Like 2 degrees, 3 degrees?
Oh, there's just so, if you basically, I don't have a crazy chart on the wall, but I've thought about making one.
Oh, you got the yarn and all that?
Yeah, with the yarn. If we're doing the yarn, we'd make Drexel Burnham Lambert, which was like really a phenomenon of the 80s. And we'd draw down like, who invested with who and whatever. And you'd capture like, I don't know, maybe 10 NBA billionaires would come down out of that thread, like just crazy. Like Tillman Fertitta owns the Rockets. He raised the money. He didn't have the money to buy the Rockets. He raised the money with his banker buddy, who's like expert in Wall Street. That guy's from Drexel, right? And on and on. You can play this game. I wish I had like a better memory. I could like just spider out the whole thing for you. So that's all real and true. The thing that happened, the thing that makes you go, is that the founder of Apollo just resigned because he accidentally gave $158 million to Jeffrey Epstein.
Accidentally.
Well, no, so they had they hired a law firm to sort of poke around what was going on here. And they created a report. They went through, Leon Black's texts with Jeffrey Epstein, his emails. They did a few dozen interviews and tens of thousands of documents and came up with this report. And that's when I really started to get worried, to be honest, because the report didn't look great. It kind of said like, oh, it was just for tax advice and estate planning. And, even in the New York Times, there were like people who do that for a living saying you could buy the entire law firm for the amount of money he paid this guy for tax advice, right?
Okay, I got you.
So then you start kind of sniffing around with like, well,
so that's usually indicative of somebody paying for another service and couching it as, obviously you can't say for sure, but a reasonable person might make that inference.
Yeah, and like, and I'm a journalist, right? And I'm trying to like, I have a job of explaining what happens in the NBA. And I'm like, well, this seems like a pretty freaking important thing to the NBA. Like, and I
Yeah.
don't see anybody else explaining it. It's like, let me see if I can figure it out. Let me see if I can. It's like, this part we haven't published yet, but there'll be a thing coming up where like I just sent the report from this company called Deckard to a guy who does that kind of research for a living. And I'm like, how does this look just in terms of like its structure and the process? And he was like, like almost every sentence, he's like, no, this is wrong. This is not how you do it. And in a nutshell, they just didn't show their work, right? They told us they read Leon Black's text, but they didn't share any of them with us, right? They told us they interviewed all these people, but they didn't quote any of them, right? And on and on. So it's all kind of like trust us, which is just not how these kinds of reports are designed to go, right? It's not good process. And actually, there's James Patterson wrote a book about Jeffrey Epstein, a nonfiction book. James Patterson, he's a Florida guy, right? He's
I read Hernandez book. I'm definitely gonna check out that. I was unaware of the Epstein book. I'll get that.
So he actually became a there's a Netflix show based on his book. But one little note in there is that there's like a little episode of in the early 80s. Epstein was helping this woman find her family fortune that had been ripped off in some kind of scheme, and he ended up partnering with a prosecutor who was looking into the same scheme, and that young prosecutor is the guy. And so they like there was like a cop movie, like, Jeffrey Epstein and this guy working together.
Like Epstein and Hooch.
Yeah, Epstein and Hooch. And fast forward decades later, that guy, the Hooch, he's the guy who did the investigation that my buddy says wasn't very well done. So like,
wow,
basically one of Jeffrey Epstein's friends wrote the freaking report for Apollo, like, which just tells me like, okay, well, someone else, the adults have to do the work now, right? Like, we can't leave it to this.
And then the CIA is connected to this somehow?
Yeah, for sure. Of course it is. Of course it is. So,
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, CIA is connected to everything, ain't it?
I didn't used to believe that, but my eyes are open. Like, I am learning a lot. So one way it's definitely connected is that the Apollo board has always, it's bigger, but it's always been 7 members. And 3 of them are on what they call the conflicts committee. So that's the part of the Apollo that's in charge of making sure the rest of Apollo doesn't have conflicts, right? It isn't like on the take or doing insider trading or whatever. Well, one of the members of the conflicts committee is this guy, Buzzy. His name's A.B. Buzzy Krongard. He's an older guy. He's like 85 now. But Buzzy's was for a while the number 3 person at the CIA. Before that,
he's involved in Apollo.
Yeah, he's on the board of Apollo. He's in charge of this investigation, or he's on the little tiny committee that's in charge of this.
There's at least 10 NBA owners tied to Apollo.
Yeah, exactly. And then it goes. Buzzy's career just gets bananas. One of the little. I mean, I don't want to look. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like, I don't want to make people believe in things without evidence. Like, but in the world of evidence, like, Buzzy was the banker who took Microsoft public. Like, so Bill Gates and Paul Allen, former NBA governor, Steve Ballmer, like, they're rich because of this stuff that happened in the 80s with Buzzy as a banker, right? And then, I mean, I just can't ignore, like, Bill Gates took a bunch of photos of Bill Gates at Jeffrey Epstein's house. And he wrote emails about it back to the company. He was like, oh, he has an unusual lifestyle. I don't think it would work for me. Like, was
a Buzzy affiliated with the Drexel?
Oh, great question. Carl Icahn, famous investor, was very much involved in Drexel. Buzzy and Carl went to Princeton together, and they're on each other. Their business careers are like tied. Like where there's Carl, Buzzy's on a bunch of boards of Carl's companies. Buzzy's wife is also a figure in this. She used to work at Apollo. She's worked at Icahn companies and been on boards of Icahn companies. Like, they're presumably have known each other since college. So I don't know for sure that Buzzy was tied in at that time. He was, he was running a bank. He's a Maryland-based guy most of his life. He was running a bank, but his bank happened to get really big in California where Drexel was happening. So I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. I would like to know the answer to that too.
Another question I had, I noticed when you were talking about the in the first art, it's either the first or the second piece, you said that a lot of the Apollo investors used Drexel investment techniques, and I'm curious, what are Drexel investment techniques?
Well,
Because that sounds ominous.
yeah. I mean, maybe like, so this thing happened where uh, Drexel got a group of investors who would just invest together. And it was super effective. And that doesn't have to be creepy, right? But it created this situation where if I bought 10% of some big company, and then I'd go to the executives and say, look, we're going to do a takeover. We think we can raise the money to buy the whole thing. Then one of the things that would happen, what they call green mail, right? So then they say, look, we'll buy your 10% for double. So they bribe me to go away, right? That was a popular way to make money for these kind of investors. It matters a lot more when you have a whole bunch of people, right? So I maybe I can only afford 10%, but the implication is, so they made this thing called the highly confident letter. Leon Black invented it, actually, which is basically they'd write a letter saying, we're highly confident we can raise all this money. And they used to actually have to raise the money to threaten people this way, but the highly confident letter to cut the line. So that was they'd roll around, able to kind of threaten every company on planet Earth with they could raise enough money so that gave them a lot of leverage to either take the company over or not. What I really meant in that thing you were astute reader were noticing, though, is a little different, which is one of the most loyal Drexel investors was this guy who had it was an insurance company. It's called I can't remember the name right now. First Executive, something like that, in California. He invested in everything Michael Milken of Drexel recommended he invest in. He was the most loyal one. And then when Drexel went out of business, all of those bonds of his big firm, Executive Life, it's called, were just on the market. Drexel had gone bankrupt, and people could buy them. So Apollo really started with some French investors gave Leon Black and his buddies a whole bunch of money to go buy them up, go buy the good ones, because these are junk bonds, right? This is the category, and you don't want to just randomly buy all of them. But they knew that some of them were super valuable, and that ended up being they made billions of dollars going on the open market and buying what was left over after of actual assets Drexel used to own. Apollo knew which were the good ones and bought them up with other people's money, and then they were off to the races. I think they made something like 2.5 billion just on that.
What are some of the things Apollo's been tied to outside of the 10 NBA owners?
Oh, so much stuff. They own Caesars, casinos. They own I guess I forget which one's the parent, Caesars or Harrah's, but I think those are tied. You remember Blackwater, the
mercenary company.
Yeah, so that's not called Blackwater anymore, but they own what's left of it now. They own another defense company that has global distribution of supplies.
So you mentioned you not want to be a conspiracy theorist, so I'll do it for you. So
yeah, go for it.
So then you could say it would be reasonable to infer that they've had something to do with regime change politics and welfare distribution if you're involved with Blackwater.
Oh, I mean, I'm not gonna rule anything out, right? I do kind of feel
you said about there's evidence of some things that this guy was this guy's roommate or whatever. Blackwater got caught with their hands dirty. And anybody can Google that and draw the conclusions for themselves. We don't need to get into that here, but Blackwater is not something one would want to be affiliated with if you want to, have a sterling reputation in the community.
Well, and there's a little bit of, so these private equity guys who were at Drexel, I noticed that almost all of them have investments in military stuff, right? I was why is that? Why would that be, right? Most investors don't, right? And I was what's with that? I don't know that and I noticed a tremendous number of them have airplanes, fleets of airplanes, in some of their businesses. I'm
I was gonna ask about that. What's the significance of that?
Yeah.
'Cause
So
I know that's very significant. That's part 7. When y'all subscribe,
You're
when y'all
tearing it
subscribe to his Substack, that is an eye-opening piece of journalism.
up. Yeah, my eyes have been opened just from like learning about this. This is where I think, John Kerry, when he was a senator in '88, and they held these hearings, and you can read all the transcripts online. I spent like, I don't know, probably 2-3 days sitting on the back porch with my highlighter, just mind blown with like, it's amazing that this isn't something we all know. But
The
my,
planes.
my favorite character is this guy named Ramon Million Rodriguez, who is now out of prison, but he was a Miami accountant who was like the maestro of moving Medellin cartel money. And he made a courier service, so couriers all over the United States would wear the uniforms and have like all the right paperwork, and they'd drive trucks to Miami airport, and they were just full of cash, just cash. And then they'd put them on Eastern Airlines freight flights to Panama, and then General Noriega's army would meet the cash and take the cash right to the national bank, and then boom, 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 it goes in this bank, that one, and then next thing you know, Ramon Million Rodriguez is in, his words, he mentioned 4 banks. One was Citibank, so he's in like the world headquarters of Citibank in New York City, and they send a limo to the airport, and they have a special guy who meets him, whose name they never learn each other's names, and they just say, hey, I'd like you to, you have an application for $1 million mortgage from this guy here in New York, like, we'll secure it with $1 million that's in your branch in Panama, like, boom, 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 like, and in this way, that he says that by the time he was arrested in '83, the Medellin cartel owned $11 billion worth of like totally clean assets in the U.S., real estate, CDs, stocks and bonds, you name it.
And this is affiliated with Apollo Global?
Well, so what happened was, actually, but one little note. This is 11 billion at a time when the richest person on planet Earth was worth 1 billion.
Okay. Whoa, that really puts some perspective.
Yeah. That the Celtics sold that year. I forget the number, but it was something like less than 100 million. It sold like 17 million, I think, that year. Like, so, this is when 11 billion was an amount of money that just would blow your mind as a bank, right? So that's when banking went from like 4% of the American economy to like over the decade, it doubled, and it's gone up since still, right? So this is where, like, you've probably seen a bunch of movies about this, right? Like this drug trade really kicked up in the time of Iran-Contra, when these same planes that were, going down with arms were coming back with drugs, and CIA was like either turning a blind eye or certainly not busting anybody.
Right.
And the amount of cocaine in the U.S., like the amount of people going to the emergency room with cocaine-related conditions went up 600%. Like, cocaine just exploded in America, and the money went to banks eventually, right? And so that started a bunch of stuff on Wall Street with all these like explosive takeovers and blah blah blah. And well, we'll see how those things all fit together. But I tell you that I got some people who know a lot about it, who I've been talking to, who are like,
well, I sidetracked you though. What was the significance of all the planes in relation to the NBA?
Right. So, cocaine was smuggled into the U.S. Originally either in like people's luggage, with like a kilo, or there were like shrimp fishermen. They're like, there were fishermen based in Florida who would go fishing in some international waters, and then the Bahamas changed the rules, and they were like, you can't fish there anymore. So these dudes were used to making like 50 grand, 100 grand a year, and suddenly they were kind of going broke. And so, they had all the gear, they had all the right stuff, they knew the right, so they could, use their boats to bring in cocaine. So it was coming in, on a slow boat or in a kilo at a time in someone's suitcase. And then the situation in Nicaragua like led to this opportunity where kind of you could get like a hall pass. If you had a plane, not too many questions were asked all of a sudden, and you could, fly your plane with arms or whatever, and then touch down in these secret little airports in the middle of nowhere, and you'd unload your and also that, there wasn't a lot of money approved by Congress for this, so we could finance it a little bit with some of the other things on the plane, right?
right there to get off the books. And speaking of said fishermen, they would often drop the loads in the water, and the fishermen would go bail them on the other
Right.
side after they left the the origin of the cocaine.
There's so
But
much
still,
crazy. Like for a while there, it seems
give,
like cocaine was just falling out of the sky, right? It was just like
yeah,
everybody with planes and
like
we
that
don't
Tom
really.
Cruise movie.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them. Actually, there's a funny little. There's so many stupid little parts of this, but like, if you're thinking that maybe the CIA was involved in the cocaine business, here's just one little stupid story, which is the police in San Francisco found like people were swimming cocaine from a boat into the bay, and so they busted them, and then they started chasing down the addresses and everyone's IDs, and they get to this guy's house, and they find in a drawer there's a gun, a grenade, a bunch of cocaine, like records of drug transactions, and about $30,000 in cash. And make a long story short, like the Contra leaders like wrote a letter being like, "Hey, that's our cash, and we want it back," right? And and some CIA bigwig visits the local police, and like they give the money back with interest. How about that? What the fuck?
Man. And I get $35 on the overdraft. This world is truly unjust.
It's ridiculous. It's so crazy. Yeah.
And are some of these planes used for NBA teams?
Well, there was a look, I don't know. I don't know. I know that like if you want to participate in the things that make tons of money, like it really helps to have a fleet of planes. This seems for sure. There was this crazy part where Buzzy for sure was involved. Was after 9/11, the CIA kind of arm's length plane network activated, and they leased a bunch of planes for the rendition program. Right, this is straight Blackwater stuff. They're swooping people off the street, no Miranda rights, bag over the head, throw them in the back of the plane, and they fly them to these black sites. They had them like in Thailand and Poland and all over, right? And people have tremendous, like 20, in one report, they said almost a quarter of the people were just mistaken identity. They just got the wrong person, but they had them for years, just, doing terrible things to them. So they can't hold a job to this day because they're like so messed up by it. And one of the planes that was used in that program for sure had a giant Boston Red Sox logo on the tail. It was like one of the investors in the Red Sox had a plane they leased out, and that was one of his clients. And he like spoke to the paper, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm super happy for the money. The CIA is a good client. So that's great."
So how does all this square with the social justice message the NBA is promoting?
Great question. I think there's like a little bit of a sickness that I'm first aware of from the NBA, but it's like the rest of us are getting there too, where like I think we've got ourselves a little used to thinking you just have to deal with the billionaire, right? Just like, it comes with a lot of compromise, and sometimes the billionaires are distracted. Sometimes they make rash decisions. Sometimes they're like, gross in some way. And I'm starting to think like maybe we're a little too tolerant of that, right? Like maybe, like, if you talk to if you get a couple of beers into a really smart NBA person, like, just like, what's your life like? Like, the crisis of the NBA is the billionaires. Not every single one of them, but like, they're fucking crazy, right? Like they're.
Let me ask you this: on the conspiracy theory meter, let's say we invent one, 0 being, lizard people, and 100 being, something confirmed that got proven to be true. Would it be safe to say that maybe some of the reason it took so long to get Donald Sterling out of the NBA was he might have been privy to some of this information, or?
Okay, so Donald Sterling was definitely like, no question. Like I know people who attended these parties, right? He threw the kind of parties where you get dirt on people, right? Like,
got you.
Blake Griffin, was drafted and went to his first party at his boss's house, and they like attached paid women to his arm, and he was super uncomfortable and talked about it later on.
I heard him tell that story on a program. That was something. You could hear in his voice that was not. And athletes get all kinds of things thrown at them. So to hear athletes so surprised at this situation, that really says something.
Yeah. So that's like, so who does that, right? Like, who like Donald Sterling would like place the ads, for all these women to come to all these events, right? And sometimes that's a story of like gaining leverage over people, right? I, I don't know if that's for sure what he did or not, but I know that he, was a sort of despicable character for a long time before he was kicked out. And he also, people tell me, there's one other thing, which is if you run the NBA, it's very hard to get things done. It's very hard to get the CBA agreed to because you have 30 billionaires who don't agree on anything, right? So David Stern had a kind of core group of voters who would just vote with him every time, and the idea was that I think they would get better response from David Stern on other stuff.
Well, right? Early in his tenure, though, he didn't deal with as many billionaires. That kind of evolved, and he started getting more pushback towards the end, right?
No, that's true. That's true. A lot changed. But yeah, Donald Sterling was one of Stern's like loyalists. Like he was like, he voted for everything. They tell me. So, so I think that was another kind of protection that he had. But yeah, this is
now. Speaking of the commissioner and the transition to leadership, I hope I'm not stepping on your toes by something that you're about to get into, but if Adam Silver was a roommate of somebody in the Apollo group, and 10 of the NBA owners can be tied to, getting finances from them in some shape, form, or fashion, what does that say about isn't there some type of competitive confliction there?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote this thing that I feel like players should care about this. There are a bunch of ways that the people who make the billions, manage their money. But one of the big common things is you invest pension fund money, right? And the way you get pension, this is what Apollo does, among others, right? You get it from like the NYPD union, right, which is run by QAnon believers who are like have nothing positive to say on issues of race, right? So Adam Silver's college roommate, Jim Zelter, works at a company that gets a tremendous amount of money from, really right-wing nut job police unions to invest, right? And those are they have to butter up those clients, right? You have to fight for that money, right? And that makes me uncomfortable. And then the players were sitting.
Well, what about the Sixers? Like, theoretically, wouldn't the Sixers have an advantage with the issue presented before Adam Silver than another team?
I mean, conceivably, if there's
a court of law, you'd have to recuse yourself.
Yeah. We're so far from like the NBA. Okay, let me tell you this. Like, I'm not like the oldest man in the world, but I've been covering the NBA for a while. Before the COVID shutdown, like I walk around an arena and I almost don't even know if I should say hi to this person I've known for 10 years because I just saw them. It's like living in a very small town, right? The whole thing, all the players, agents, executives, league officials, everything. It's like smaller than this little tiny town I live in New Jersey, right? It's like being on a tiny college campus. And so, is there a chance of favoritism here, there, everywhere? Yeah, everywhere. Like that's the least of it. This Josh Harris Zelter thing. Yeah, it could be, but there could be so many more, right? It's just, that everybody in every front office has worked together with everybody else for their whole lives, right?
Gotcha.
It's not. It's just so incestuous. Yeah.
So basically, there wasn't going to be somebody that originated outside of that world, regardless if they had anything to do with Apollo. I mean, like that. Whoever was going to be the next NBA commissioner was going to come from the ranks of the NBA.
Probably, yeah. Like you're probably, or there's the NBA has a bunch of deep relationships with a small bunch of law firms, where David Stern and Adam Silver both came from. Proskauer Rose, Cravath, Swain Moore. There's a few others. Those are the same law firms that are in all of these books I'm reading about Apollo and Drexel and all of the heyday of private equity. It's the same law firms. So I think if you work at one of those law firms, I think you have a pretty good shot at making it to position of power in the NBA.
Got you. And you were talking about some of the conferences they have, and sometimes you said players speak there, where people get paid to speak. Caron Butler, I don't know if he was active at the time or not. How involved are they? Are there any players heavily involved in I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say nefariousness, but let's say, I know Andre Iguodala just made a ton of money off Zoom, but are they involved in any of these hedge funds or anything?
So I think there's a choice, right? Like, so you make the NBA and you can, you know, do honest things that you control, you know, for your community, etc., right? Or you can get the deep pocket people involved, right? You can get, you know, you can take the money basically, right? And then you can, so, but I don't think there's a way to like bring in the really deep pockets where everything's like super on the up and up, right? I think that's kind of whether you're in the
I
NBA or
agree.
not.
We all walk a fine line. We make a moral decision when we order from Amazon.
Right. Right.
Agreed.
So if you're, you know, I don't know, like Shaquille O'Neal's in every commercial now, right? Like, is every company that he's representing, like, you know, morally chaste through and through? Like, probably not, because they
Probably
have enough
not.
money to
Yeah.
advertise on those commercials,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you're talking about the Michael Milken was like the guy who founded Drexel and went to prison and then came back out, and now he has this you know, big
Oh,
conference.
Michael Milken founded Drexel. I know about Michael. Wow. Damn.
Oh yeah, so that's the conference Cron Butler was speaking at. So you know, if you got a startup to promote, like, do you want to go speak at Michael Milken's conference? Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I mean, so sometimes you got to walk through the mud to get to the oasis. I'm sure it's a mixed metaphor, but you get the point.
It's a good one though. I like it. Yeah.
Now, so this is I never want to be stereotypical, but like conservative Blackwater, that's typically against what your average NBA player's ideology would be. Are they indifferent, unaware of how the owners or some of these owners get their money?
So like Chris Paul said that last summer when all the protests were going on, it was like, the main thing. He said he was doing Zoom calls like all day, every day in his role with the union, and he was saying that like players wanted to know if they were pulling on the uniform of somebody who supported Donald Trump, right? And that's the first time I've really seen anyone say something publicly about questioning your owner, right? Because it's just career suicide to do that, right? So usually there's just like a head down, do the job, don't talk about it publicly. But privately, I think we know that, like, actually I thought it was pretty interesting. Jeremy Grant went to the Pistons because he wanted to go to a black run team, right? Black run front office. That was like, oh, that's it. That means he didn't want to play somewhere else, right? So anyway, I think we're starting to get a little hint of that. There are some teams that are seen as like, more forward thinking, right?
Well, shout out to Jeremy Grant for that, because I found the one constant I've noticed in my life when it comes to change, the most effective thing to do is vote with your dollar. And basically he voted with his dollar. And I mean, there certainly could be more. There definitely should be more diversity in the executive positions of the NBA, but probably across every business. I mean, I don't know the track record, but it just seems crazy that I'm reading these like, again, y'all have to go to truehoop.com and subscribe to this Substack. I'm reading these mind-blowing articles, and it's juxtaposed because these have been coming out for I guess about a year or so, maybe a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's juxtaposed to seeing like the social justice messages on the NBA players' shirts, and it's just an odd dichotomy.
They're the first league to put Black Lives Matter on the court and the first league to take it off the court. It's gone. Like, can you imagine that meeting? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Hey, that was good. Good thing. Good job. We fixed that. America's all good now. Yeah, they walked a weird line with Trump, man. They never really, like, Adam Silver, who had earned himself a lot of credibility on race issues, like, he never said one bad thing about Donald Trump. And I only imagine it's because of who his bosses are. But yeah,
Donald Trump certainly said some bad things about Adam Silver, though.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think the players made a huge mistake, to be honest. Like I really admire George Hill, like taking the mic when they held up a game, striking in the bubble, and then there was a night where the players had a meeting and there was a lot of arguing as people stormed out, and then they resolved to kind of address these issues with the billionaires, and they committed a $200 million, $300 million, and they're gonna like do a bunch of longer term things. But I was like, I don't know if those guys can be your partners here. Like, I don't know if you're really on the same team on this one.
Yeah.
Uh,
I remember thinking similar thoughts, brother. I know what you mean. It
yeah.
just seems like, it's a little bit too extreme. I don't want to be, David Downer, but some of this shit reminds me of Jeremy Webb. And do you ever have any fear of writing stuff like this?
I mean, I have I have to be careful, right? But I've been talking to there are people who know a lot more about this than I do. Well, first of all, almost everything I'm reporting is from like other journalist work, right? So those people, I'm
So you're
basically
not
like
pulling out the smoking gun that's gonna get the guy who'll kill you sent to prison. Got you.
um, I
You're making
so
sure those guns have already cooled down, and then you're refurbishing them, and your articles in a.
I mean, I love doing like original journalism, but it's hard to do this kind of stuff when you're locked at home, right? Like you really do kind of need to like go to dinner and like get introduced to people and all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing, the phone rings here for sure, but yeah, a lot of it, so basically I'm talking to journalists all the time who are doing way riskier things. This woman, Catherine Belton, is a freaking hero. She wrote like the book on how Putin runs Russia, and it's unbelievable. And she like sat down face to face with like this oligarch and that one, and like it's like she's the bomb, right?
Man, you're like the 10th person that's told me I gotta get that book.
Oh no, Putin's people,
of a very disparate, eclectic group of people too, including two rappers. Because mostly I do music journalism.
Yeah. No, it's very similar. Things are happening very similarly in these two worlds. But
yes,
yeah,
sir.
so we had her on our little show. Like she's a hero. Like, and and luckily still safe. So and then I also have talked to like the publisher of a major American newspaper was telling me that like they did a bunch of research on are their journalists safe writing about this kind of stuff, and basically they determined that in the U.S. yes, he's like it's a little different. Watch for your vacation kind of thing. And actually, more recently, I talked to a guy who knows these people personally, has for a long time, and he was kind of encouraging me to like partner with a bigger news organization in telling this story. And I was like, wait, like why? Like you mean like for reach or for like security, right? And he was like, no. He's like, security, you're fine. His point was basically that like it's almost routine now for the deep pockets here to just kind of break off somebody who takes the fall.
Got you.
Journalists are like not even really a big concern.
Chris Carter 101.
Yeah, totally.
So do you and then my other question in regards, again, I'm not trying to be a David Downer, but obviously you did great work at ESPN. I'm sure you probably, well, I don't know, do you ever want to return to a more corporate platform, and do you feel that this type of writing might hurt that?
It'll definitely hurt that.
Well, yes. I mean, the one constant is change.
No, look, I mean,
history might look back at you as like the only one that had any sense to talk about this,
I'm gonna do it, right? Like life is short. This is the kind of stuff I like to do. I can't stand bullshit. Like I just have never had any time for it. Like I just don't want to. What am I gonna do? Go write about like, oh, like he worked on his left hand, like well, I know about like all this other crap. Like, I mean, I just can't. So at the same time, I do think the future of journalism will be different than the past. And I think that like I don't think history is gonna be kind to these people who, I mean, I have a lot of like wonderful, like lifelong friends who are full-time NBA journalists who just never touch this. And I feel like that's a little timid. Like, I think like we have a job here, right? We can't just give everyone.
It's like you and Jamel Hill.
What's that?
Like you and Jamel Hill, because she wrote stuff about Sterling way about the slumlord stuff.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. I was curious, I've read every article except for the one today twice. I've only read that once, and I'm working my way through the links. Are you spending more time doing this than you did working at ESPN? Because your workload must be tremendous.
It takes a lot of time. It does. Well, now I'm like hooked in. So now like my relaxing time now is like, I'm just randomly like off my desk here, but like, look, here's a big book about Drexel, and like, oh, here's another book about Drexel, right? And I'm trying to make these. I know it's pretty intense stuff, and I thank you for being like having the right mindset to really dive in, because like not a regular reader does that. I'm trying to make it, inviting and fun to read and easy to understand, but at the same time, like, it's such a complicated story that it gets pretty intense. And so, yeah, I'm like,
You know what you could, I mean, well, people hate on unsolicited advice.
no, I do it.
You might want to do like one of those like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones things that got the character list.
Yeah.
Because I constantly find myself having to go back and remember who this guy was, because there's just a lot of people, a lot of moving parts.
I'm gonna tell you the honesty. I really, even though I'm trying my best to make it like delightful to read now, like I know this is the first draft. Like I know that the real popular version it'll probably be like animated or just like totally different, right? Like
well, it's not poorly written by any stretch. Like you got a nice narrative pace. Just like I said, it's hard to remember that many names all at once. You know,
we did it, so we tried it. No, I agree with you. So way back, I did a big similar thing on Mikhail Prokhorov. I don't know, a couple of years ago, and we published a little icon with each person's face. But problem is it's email, and so like that little thing gets really long. And so you end up like with this tremendous scrolling thing. I think you could make a kind of like immersive web experience would be kind of good. Here's what I really think though is like I'm working.
That's where you miss that ESPN machine. You'd have that nice little animated Baxter Holmes type deal going on.
No, that's pretty cool. That guy who makes all that stuff is a buddy of mine, dude. That's like it's huge value added to have it look.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. Those things are awesome.
Yeah. The slider, they call it. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that, we've been approached a little bit about like making it a podcast or a movie or whatever. And I feel first I want to like get it down. I want to like, finish the thing.
You want to get your reps.
Yeah, I get my reps. And then
like how'd you feel if you got a movie deal right now and then a year later you uncovered something that was way more than anything that would have been in the movie, and then you wasted your shot because then if the movie does good, there's already 3 copycats and you're coming back to the market, it's oversaturated.
Yeah, I guess you guys deal with this all the time in music, right? Same kind of idea. But yeah, you want to like also, I'm kind of learning what works here, right? Like what's the hook? What's the chorus, right? Like how does this fit together, right? And most of this we will throw away, but I think there's probably a way to make it so like, God damn it, America, look what happened here. This thing matters, right? This is a crazy ass story. And it's not done. It's the characters who star in the story are still in giant positions of power right now.
Yeah, they are. And then, earlier I said, give the movie pitch. I don't want to step on the great Tom Haverstrow's toes, but there's a article about Michael Jordan and GameStop, and hopefully that'll entice some more people. So could you give the elevator pitch on that one? And then go subscribe to the truehoop.com Substack to hear this full story. Because
Tom Haverstraw joined us, I don't know, maybe 5-6 weeks ago, and like he just hits out of the park every time. He just has this crazy insight. Really fun to work with him. But yeah, he calls me up and he's like, that GameStop guy, like one of the big billionaires who's losing his money because he shorted the stock, like the key guy is Michael Jordan's partner in owning the Charlotte Hornets, and was like expected to be maybe the future big time owner, and yeah, so that he kind of lost his shirt. We should circle back and see how everything shook out now, because I know it's like a different chapter now, but
and then you had the Golden State Warriors owner kind of on the other side at some point, right? Don't get too much into the details. They need to go read the article, but it's just I'm sure that's gonna be an interesting owners meeting next time.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So you have like
MJ's competitiveness. He probably got dartboards with homeboy face on it.
Right, and one of the questions that we didn't really answer is like, how much did Michael Jordan have wrapped up invested with that guy, right? Like, we heard different things, and don't really want to speculate, but yeah, for real, like he said Mark Cuban was all in on the Robinhood guys, and one of the Warriors investors, and yeah, and it was all playing on social media. It just looks so like just a little glimpse into your board of governors meeting, right? Like all these nut jobs.
Yeah,
and nobody involved, by the way. Not one person is like asking themselves, how would a good financial system run, right? Like it's more just like, it's like going to an MMA fight and just like, yeah, just like taking all these crazy swings at each other. It's like, okay, great. Whatever.
I mean, at some time the rate of expansion ain't gonna match the rate of inflation, but fortunately we haven't got to that point yet. I'm sure no matter what, the NBA will always retain a core fan base and it'll be a viable sports enterprise. And it may have its ups and downs, or it may overtake football. Who knows?
Yeah,
Or
no,
maybe someday there'll be a world basketball association that the NBA evolves into.
they did like one point a guy told me a really interesting thing, which was they had a major plan to have stadiums all over China, and David Stern screwed it up. That's a whole nother story. But they
I've heard
didn't
about
fail.
that. Yeah.
They didn't fail in China. Like so here, like when British soccer teams go to China to play, it's like Manchester United is what's famous. That's the brand, right? Arsenal is famous. The FA Cup is not globally famous, right? The Premiership is not the global brand, right? Same is true with every sport, basically. The NBA is the one exception. Around the globe, the basketball brand that matters isn't FIBA, it's the NBA logo. Like the NBA logo itself is on, I think they told me something like 1 billion cartons of milk in China every day. And they made the NBA China as an entity that holds all the intellectual property rights for the league in China. And like, it makes tons of money, even though they didn't have their dreams come true for an NBA league there. So I think that's because they put like 200 people in a full-time working like 15 years ago in China, working all this out. So I think they've been like, they're more likely to be a global league than any other league. Like the other, I ended up talking to this crazy banker guy, and he's basically the NHL and the NFL come to him and they're like, how do we get more global like the NBA? And they're like, well, you're 20 years behind. You got to put in the work and having people know who you are in Turkey, right? And
by the time the NBA can monetize the clips instead of just the subscriptions, they'll be so far ahead of hockey and football.
Yeah,
I think that. But I'm not going to take up too much more of your time. But since you brought up China, I'd be remiss to ask. You definitely seem like you're an actual fan. And do you ever feel conflicted in your morality as an NBA fan, given the heavy involvement with China?
Oh yeah. No, that was terrible. Yeah. Yeah. I guess like just by nature, I'm like, I'm rooting for the protesters on the streets of Hong Kong, right? Like I just am. I guess that's not to say I'm like rooting for every protester everywhere, because like some issues I just don't understand well enough to even understand what's going on, right? But in that one, I felt like I had a decent handle on it, and it was kind of alarming how that went down. I'm not totally like the league didn't totally roll over, right? Like they could have if they had Daryl Morey fired immediately, they could have restored their hundreds of millions in lost revenue, and they didn't do that. And frankly, Daryl Morey never missed a paycheck.
Yeah,
so
indeed.
They're in the middle. To me, they certainly didn't like stand up to China. There wasn't like a big message sent, but I think there was a little bit of like I think he was a little bit protected for that year because it would just look like they were capitulating, to China if he got fired. So I don't know if that doesn't leave me feeling great. But
can I get on my pulpit for a minute?
Please.
Regardless of who's right or wrong on the political spectrum, all these elections are all for the last 20 years or so. It seems like it's 49-51. It's never like 70-30, 65-35. So the point being is that it's our country is in an eternal state of conflict. And then when you make a choice to do the things you grew up loving, like watching the NFL or ordering from Amazon, or even now given this stuff that's coming to light with me about the NBA, it's like you have to sacrifice your morals a little bit just to even be able to exist. Because I mean, how are you going to have a family and take a stand against this stuff? You'll never be able to get a job.
Yeah, it's a hell of a trick they pulled off here, right? Like just to just to be a decent, hardworking person, you kind of have to endorse some very creepy billionaires, right? Like,
well, I admire how you don't get mired in the weeds of the conspiracy theories, and you just put the facts out there, and you leave it for people to connect the dots. And I don't claim to have the answers to anything. I can just tell that there's certain things that are wrong.
I mean, how in the hell does Colin Kaepernick not have a job? Like think about what has to happen. Think about the kind of people who put together an NFL like that. Like, and I don't usually like to say kind of people. It's a scary phrase, but like that's organized, right? Like that's crazy to me. Like it's very hard. I mean,
Well, the
I'm not an
scary
NFL
thing,
fan.
bro, I hate to interrupt you, but the scary thing, brother, is if it's not unorganized, if it's unorganized, if it's just an automatic mindset that doesn't even have to be discussed, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. That is scarier and possible. That's possible too, right? But yeah, sometimes I feel like well, I know you think like me on this one, but like I'm thinking about like what's happening that we're not seeing that leads to this outcome. And like in some cases, I'm like, oh, someone's got to go to jail. Like, there's some stuff that's happened that's like, this is just like, I don't know. I don't know what happened to Leon Black and Jeffrey Epstein, but I know that $158 million. I know how he used that money. Like writing that check is, woo, that's a very, very bad things happen, like, and I mean, he did just resign, but it took a while. I'm kind of surprised at how tolerant we are of things like that.
Well, another thing, that has me looking inward from reading your series is I'm kind of up in arms a little bit, right? And I'm like, damn, this is messed up, right? But then now I'm also kind of feeling guilty that why don't I feel this bad about players endorsing companies who have factories in China that employ child labor that's basically slave labor?
It's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, it's funny, and
it's just so hard to know what to do, man. And then like, what do you do when like your 8 and 10 and 12 and 15-year-old ask you these questions?
I know. I mean, on the one hand, like we don't get to be perfect. Nobody has to be perfect. Like that's not what we're going for, right? Like my friend David has this great line. Actually, I think it's on the wall over there, which is it's hard to be perfect, but it's not hard to be decent, right? So, like you and I both know that in the next week we'll spend some dollars that will go to somebody that we don't love, right? Like, yeah. But if somebody falls off their bike, you can help them up, right? Like, etc. Right? I think if decent people, so here, like, I feel very comfortable with NBA players as like decent, hardworking people, right? Like, and I think if you look around the stands, at least in the cheap seats, right, feel very comfortable, decent, hardworking people, right? I feel like all in all, like most people here, I totally believe in, right? I think we're in a strange moment of history where a very small number of people have so much influence and money that they do crazy things to hang on to it, right? And so like people can afford, and to be totally honest, like I think that Citizens United Supreme Court decision was a gargantuan one, because now it means like every politician who needs to raise a ton of money has to go seek out billionaires, right? New Deal, and that's a very small club running the country, right? So I think fixing some of these things would not be rocket science, right? I just think if we just get so that the country works the way it was, well, at least the way they taught us it was designed, right. where we vote and stuff, like that could work. I mean, what happened in Georgia in the Senate was like, okay, like people can be heard once in a while. People can
affect change. I mean, the way I look at it is I try to do, as much good as I can raising my kids and locally. And as far as like the NBA, I look at it how, like, I look at the military, like I love the soldiers. I don't necessarily like the army.
Right.
And I love basketball and I love the NBA players.
Right.
And I mean, you've been around them. I've been around a few in my day. It don't matter who on them teams. Them dudes they want to play the most competitive basketball. That's what they're really there for. Because even if the money was, $1 million a year, they'd probably be about the same. I bet you it'd be a pretty similar makeup of players in the NBA.
I mean,
unfortunately, that's the venue that they get to exercise their gifts in, and hopefully, the ownership's gotten more progressive every decade by decade. So hopefully we can make more improvements, just not as incrementally.
I think if decent people keep being decent, like, actually, I was just talking about this with my son, like bodies heal themselves. You know what I mean? Like you take the cancer out or whatever. And like, it's amazing if you just like stop getting poisoned, right? Like then this is what nature does, right? It knows how to get better, right? And wait, this is a crazy question, but did you happen to watch My Octopus Teacher? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I heard about it, but I haven't
It's,
seen it. No.
Netflix was just like, recommend shows. It was like, oh, Henry, you're gonna love this. And so finally the other night we watched it. It's pretty moving, but
Is it a live documentary?
Yeah, it's a real documentary. Yeah.
Okay, so I have seen the part where you leave the Netflix on it and it runs like the trailer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So basically, this dude, like,
that was visually compelling.
Oh my god, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's like a love story with an octopus. But at one point the octopus gets really badly hurt and looks like it's gonna die. And and it's a little message to him like, okay, you can take some real hits, and then 100 days later, it's like a beautiful, healthy octopus again, right? It has a brand new leg grew back, and so I think there's like we can do more healing than we think if we just gotta you gotta remove the cancer.
Got you. And let's close out with a little bit of fun topics. What has True covered recently? Basketball related, or what are some of your post All-Star observations? Just give me any thoughts. Let's get out here on some nice good basketball thinking.
No, that's a good point. So interesting thing I thought from Tom Haberstroh was like that there weren't as many big trades, the trade deadline, as we thought there might be. Kyle Lowry, because
I never thought he'd get traded. I thought the age and the contract, I was like, no one's gonna do that. That doesn't make sense. That's just something to talk about.
Yeah, you could be right. But he called around a bunch of front offices, and there's like, no, like people started to think that Bradley Beal and Kawhi Leonard aren't 100% going to stay where they are, and if there's a chance that those guys are available, then you don't want to give up your Matisse Thybulle or all of your kind of young assets that you might throw into a Kyle Lowry deal. You want to hang on to them in case they can bring you one of those preferred players.
Do you want Kawhi Leonard at this point if the price is commensurate? Like, just even as a supermax player? Like, I'm not sure I'd be happy if he came to Washington. I mean, if it was for Westbrook, I'd love it.
It depends where you're going, right? Like, one of the rumors was Miami, right? And he really wanted to play with Jimmy Butler before they got Paul George. And so, like, if Kawhi Leonard's super happy to be in Miami, then of course he's the kind of guy Miami would love to have, right?
Well, I'm worried about the physical ability.
Yeah, no,
I see a great diminishment. I just see, there was a point in Jordan's career where he reached like this mastery where it didn't matter about his physical metrics. He could get to the spot he needed to get a shot off that he could make consistently. And Kawhi Leonard definitely has that ability, but the claw is long gone. Yeah, I mean, maybe it can come back in the playoffs, but I put the over under on chase down blocks and the rest of Kawhi Leonard's career at 10. And
yeah, he's not bouncy. He's not bouncy. But wait, when was this game? There was I'm trying to remember if it was the end of last year or beginning of this year, but there was like a 90 seconds at the end of a game where he just like owned everything, like defense, offense, not just like, it was just a total reminder, like you're just getting smacked around, like, oh my God, this guy is the best player in the league when he's like that, right? I don't know.
I hope so, because I love watching him.
Yeah. But that was the one, and I don't know what. And Brad, I'm always with you. I'm always like younger, right? Like the best players can run and jump, right? Like, and but the brand names are usually pushing 30, and on the downslope. So yeah,
I don't want the Wizards to trade Beal.
No,
because I mean, you work to get a player to that level. Like I feel like Tommy Shepard should be able to build around him. I got faith in this Tommy. I like Tommy Shepard.
He's a wonderful guy. Yeah, he's a wonderful guy. Very decent dude. Yeah.
Very entertaining podcast. I mean, I'm working my way up. I was going to ask for the hookup on Tom Haberstroh, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no problem. Get all the Toms.
Hey, Thibodeau, Chambers, I'm down for them all. All right, and then we're gonna end with this. Do you think I live in Orlando, and I'm still gonna butcher the name. Do you think Vucevic? Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did.
Do you think he'll make an All-Star game in Chicago?
Yeah, he probably will. I'm only hesitating because he might not get the ball.
Andre Drummond's gonna be an unrestricted free agent. He might come to Charlotte.
I think Andre Drummond signed with the Lakers.
No, I'm sorry. I'm talking about after. When he becomes an unrestricted free agent.
I see what you're saying.
And maybe Andre Drummond on Charlotte. If he takes a nice price, with LaMelo and Gordon Hayward is an efficient 20 and 10.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'm worried
instead
about
of like I feed him in the post and all that shit that didn't work for the most of his career.
And I just saw, you see this thing the Lakers released today, like a little welcome to LA, Andre Drummond, little social media thing. And it had like 8 bullet points. And, you know, it was like most, you know, steals of any center. And it goes through these different things. And then like one of them is proficient in Microsoft Excel.
Hey, he doing better than me, so I can't knock him.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing I saw today.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go check that one out and screenshot it. Might need a little chuckle. Proficient in Microsoft Excel. Shit, if nothing else, he can get one of them jobs. You know how like you see on movies when somebody had a job being a janitor, and then somebody's filling out the resume form, and they'll be like facility sanitation maintenance expert, and they get hired to run like the Parker Hotel and all sorts of hilarious suits. Andre, the Lakers pulling that off. They got one of them people. They probably got a little Hollywood scriptwriter doing that.
They probably do. They probably do. I mean, I wonder if it's just a joke. I wonder if he's good at Excel at all. I gotta know the story behind that. But yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too. I definitely like the odd little quirks of the NBA just as much as the excitement. You know, the whole picture is what makes it what it is, which is why Troop has been such a valuable contribution to the culture for so long. I can tell you're not the most like one to hear praise kind of guy, but when True Hoop was on ESPN, that was a daily read.
No, the truth. Look, that's the deal. They don't call it the happy truth, right? It's the bitter truth, right? Like if you're telling the truth, a lot of times it goes down a little hard, unfortunately. But yeah, I got a heart of gold. I love the game, but yeah, I'm not willing to go through like, oh, everything's just wonderful. Like that's not my nature. Never been my nature. Never been that guy.
Well, I'm sure enough people will be impressed by the work for you because, you know, like I said, it's not just because this guy I consider a legend was nice enough to be a guest on my show that we'll say the Apollo investment series has just been phenomenal.
Oh, no, thank you. All right, well, I think that's probably going to be, we're 8 parts in. It's probably going to end up being like 12, 13, 14 parts. So we're getting there. But yeah, I'm on it.
And that'll be a book form one day, right?
What's that?
Well, you're going to have to put it in book form one day.
Yeah, or let's do the movie. Come on, let's do this.
Well, now you gotta do like the fictional movie, you know, like Snowfall is to the drugs. Yeah, then the real you know, maximizing revenue streams, then the real documentary, you know, and then the book.
Do you want to be my agent?
Man, I just got the idea. You need like the World Wide West who could take that idea and introduce you to the person who knows how to execute it.
World Wide West. Then we should have talked about him. That's the story. Yeah, he's killing it in New York.
Well, I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
All right. Well, shit. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you.
The Superfax Show, Superfax Network, Mr. Henry Abbott, TrueHoop.com. Make sure you subscribe to the very reasonably priced $10 a month Substack. And thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good night.
Hey, listen, I'm going to email you Tom Haberstroh's stuff.
That's a bet. Thank you.
And do you want to?
The Superfax Network, home of Gen Pop, STE, and the Superfax Show, now available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. Come check out St. Laz, G from the Shop, and Mark Waldo Ward.